Hey, folks, everybody. Welcome
Hey,
to
Ed.
the 98th episode of Quarkus Insights. And we have a special treat for you for those who weren't able to see today's talk live on YouTube. Uh, so, Holly, would you like to introduce yourself real quick before we get into some general?
Yeah, although I can barely hear you, unfortunately. I don't
Yeah,
know if it's the same for you, Roberto.
yeah, I have the same issue. I think maybe it's a mic issue. But we were
Oh,
hearing you way better when we were on the waiting room.
hmm.
Maybe it's just like a distance thing.
Can you hear me now?
I
Yes.
think it's better now. Yeah.
Okay.
Hooray. Yeah. So you've given us a sneak preview of what I'm going to be talking about, which is the vengeful demo gods and how the demo gods are like extra vengeful when you go into some places. But I'm Holly Cummins. I'm a software engineer on the Quarkus team. I work for Red Hat. I've been here for about 4 months. So I'm in that sort of place where I'm still learning and asking lots of stupid questions and having lots of fun trying everything out.
There are no
Excellent.
stupid questions.
Well, see, thank you, because there are questions that show a gap in the documentation.
Oh, that's for
Oh,
sure. That's for sure.
I couldn't agree more.
All right, so well, I guess before we get into the demo and everything, let's see what we have from Quarkus News wise. Roberto, do you have anything to share?
Well, I mean, we have like a new release coming out, minor one. You're right, 2.11.2, right? If I
Yeah, I
remember
think
correctly.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And now probably we're gonna have like a few weeks without releases. I mean, we ask your compression because a lot of the Quarkus team members are going on PTOs and vacations, right? So it's holiday season, summertime, and most of our team needs to relax as well and rest. But we'll be back in September full force with the regular schedule.
Awesome. All right, cool. So let's jump into it. Holly, how do you want to do this? You want to share slides or
Yeah, let's
what's the plan?
start. Yeah, let's start with the demo, and then we can
Okay.
talk about the demo, and then we can Inception.
Mm.
We can then go on, and I've got some slides as well. Can you all hear my computer? By the way, I couldn't find a setting for the audio.
I personally can't.
Can you play a sound with your computer, or is
Yeah,
it playing right now?
yeah, you should be hearing some sort of low-level crunchings and growlings and that kind of thing. To be honest, it's possibly better if you can't hear the sound from my computer because it's a little
Oh,
bit
we
distracting.
we cannot hear you,
Yeah,
or we
I
cannot hear
can't.
your computer. I mean,
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I have a fix for that. No, I don't have a fix for that. Okay, we'll just leave it without sound. So what I've got, one of the things that I'm going to be looking at is the Quarkiverse and our sort of ecosystem of extensions. And so the first thing I did as part of that, of course, is to let me de-inception us, to write an extension.
And you might want to make it just a little bit bigger because on YouTube the quality
Yeah.
isn't excellent all the time.
Cool. So I wrote an extension, and I didn't want to write a really boring extension, and there's a lot of useful extensions out there already, so I decided that the obvious thing to do was to write a useless extension. So the scenario and the reason this might be, well, I think it would be a stretch to ever say it would be useful, but the scenario where it maybe can be kind of plausible is what extensions allow you to do is make changes to a lot of code pretty easily. So for example, if you have a new requirement come in and you've got a big estate, you can drop in an extension and then it can apply that new requirement, depending what the requirement is, obviously, to your whole estate at the same time. And so in this case, I was thinking about observability. And I think with observability, we're converging fairly well now on OpenTelemetry. And there's, a lot of standardization and a lot of interoperability. This is something that, Roberta knows in a lot more detail than me. But of course, there are still these fringe observability clients out there that don't have that integration. And so what if you suddenly have a requirement for one of those and you want to make that change? An extension is potentially a nice way to get support for that client into your Quarkus application, and also do it maybe in a way that has a better developer experience than you might have had before, where you'd have to go and through and instrument everything. So in this case, the observability client is Minecraft. Which isn't in any way a conventional observability client. I don't think they ever had that requirement when they wrote Minecraft, but it can be made to work with some qualifications, actually, I should say. So when I say it can be made to work, I think we don't sometimes realize how lucky we are with our ecosystem and the stability of our ecosystem. And so when I went to build this morning, I discovered that a minor update had come in somewhere, and one of my dependencies was now at a different version, even though I hadn't changed anything. And so because of that, my whole build just completely failed, even though I hadn't changed anything. So Georgios and I had a slightly stressful morning trying to figure out what was going on. And so I would say, if you want an easy life, don't use Minecraft for your observability client, but you possibly worked that out already. So let me show you what I've got. I've got a super simple application. Actually, let me get this a bit bigger too.
Can you make the terminal a little bigger?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
Perfect.
Excellent.
So this is just the classic to-do app that you've probably seen lots of times before, if you've seen any of the Quarkus team demo something. So I've got it running there, and then I can go to the web and I can add a to-do, I can mark to-dos, all that kind of thing. But what I haven't got is any observability beyond just the logs coming to system out. So I wrote an extension, which I'll show you what it does first, and then I'll go through some of the details of the extension. So if I go back to my palm.xml for my to tab, and I add my little Minecrafter extension, when I go back here, you can see because of dev mode, it's just automatically reinitialized anything that needs to be reinitialized. And so I've got some extra logging coming out with that little Minecrafter annotation. That's not necessarily so exciting because I had logging coming out to the console before. But what should be more exciting is that I also have my Minecraft observability client that it should now be connected to. So I've got an instance of Minecraft server running here.
Yeah. So yeah, let's go through again exactly what kind of pieces we have here, because there's a lot of pieces to this, right?
There's a lot of pieces, yeah. So this is a Minecraft server that I've done a mod for. So really, it's my observability client, and I'm going to send API calls to my Minecraft server based on events that happen in my application.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in this scenario, the words server and client end up totally overloaded, and the words extension also end up totally overloaded. So I've got two extensions, two clients and two servers, and then they sort of all match together in a confusing way. But if we look at my Minecraft client, which is my client for my client now. And if I go to my web application, what we should see is that if I do something, I get an event. And unfortunately, I died. Minecraft, I mean, again, it's stating the obvious, but Minecraft is the worst environment for demos because you can't control whether it's day or night, and it's much more dangerous at night. And so if the system, the world clock happens to be at night, when you're doing your demo, you have to dodge zombies and that kind of thing. And now I've respawned underground, so I don't have lightning, which I think I can fix. So if I just go to Minecraft, I should be able to respawn again. So what I'm doing here is I'm killing myself in lava in order to try and turn up somewhere that has lightning.
Well, usually lava should kill you pretty quick, but it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, there's something about demo clock, right? Like when you want something to happen quick,
Yeah.
it takes a really long time to die.
At least on Quake, it was almost instantly.
Okay, so there we've got the notification. Tried to swim in lava was not a good idea. And so now if I go back to my browser and if I do this, we can see that
something happened.
And something happened, and whoops. When you want to move the window, you have to tab out.
Yeah, that's fun. That's always fun.
Somewhere around here, there should have been a time-stamped chicken, which again, more phrases that you never thought you'd say. So I can't see my time-stamped chicken, so let's make a few more chickens.
A lot of lightning.
Some sort of lightning, yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm just gonna just so that you can hear it for a bit, I'm gonna turn my speakers on, which might let me know if that's an echo apocalypse, but hopefully you can now get some sound coming out from it.
Let's see. Something came back in the background.
Yeah,
we hear something not very clear, but
okay. Let me
So far this is successful. I mean, everything you've done in Minecraft actually works.
Yeah, well, I mean, oh look, there's a timestamp.
Oh, there's a chicken there.
Excellent.
Yeah, I had to start timestamping the chickens because one of the problems that I had was persistence of state. So once I did it several times, I'd end up with this proliferation of chickens. And if I did it like 100 times while I was testing, I'd then try and do a demo and I'd have like 100 chickens there. And you wouldn't know which ones were the fresh chickens and which ones weren't. So let's see the error path now. So if I go to an API endpoint that exists, same thing. It's a shame I couldn't get the sound to work because we do have lots of exciting chicken noises over here. But it's much the same. And then if I do something that didn't work, you get an explosion. So you can see my health is starting to go down as I'm getting bad requests coming in.
Yeah.
I just want to show one more thing too, because I'm going to make my terminal a little bit smaller. And I'm going to show you if I restart it, you can see that we've got a notification saying it's stopped. And then we'll get all of the Quarkus logging piped in through Minecraft. So you can see there these, there's the Minecraft logging. Sorry, there's the Quarkus logging coming in on the Minecraft console. Oh, and there's some more chickens. So that is the demo.
Very nice. So I assume that now you're going to explain how all the pieces
Mm.
fit together to produce this.
Yeah. So as we mentioned at the beginning, we've got 3 pieces. There's the Minecraft mod, which I'm not going to talk about because it's complex and nothing to do with Quarkus. We've got the Quarkus to-do app, and the only interesting thing in that application is the addition of this dependency, which is why I think that the model is so nice, that you can make these fairly substantial changes that are hooking parts of the application by only adding the one extension. So all of the fun stuff is in the
So
extension.
the to-do app is what we saw, like that simple UI where you were like hitting the browser, right?
Yeah, exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then on the extensions have 2 parts. There's the deployment part and there's the runtime part. And the Quarkus model is that we want to push as much as possible into deployment as possible rather than at runtime. And so what we've got in here in deployment is, oh, my screen's frozen. That's kind of exciting.
It seems
Okay,
to be
cool.
working for us.
Yeah, I suspected it was. Yeah.
It was just like a glitch on IntelliJ.
Yeah. So
Maybe you want to like um, minimize the 2 panes that are on the bottom, like the problems and the event log.
yeah,
Make it a little
cute.
bigger. Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah, that's
And
good
probably
for
the
real
Maven
estate.
one can go as well.
Yeah. Cool. Yes, that's much better.
Excellent.
So for all extensions, the sort of the backbone of the extension is a processor in the deployment part. And what it does is it has methods which chain together build items and build steps. So each of these things is a build step. So that little method is a build step. That little method is a build step. And what build steps do is they take in build items and they output build items. And so the Quarkus extension framework will chain together the build steps. So all you need to do in order to make stuff happen is just in your processor there, have some methods which declare as either inputs or outputs the build items. So you can see I've got about 4 different kinds of functionality going on here. And most of the build items that you would want to use, if you're not like a Quarkus developer, as in a developer of Quarkus itself, almost all of them probably already exist. There's a range of build items that can do. I've got a list that in slides that I'll show in a bit, but things like logging, things like changing annotations, any of those things, there's probably already a build item for it. So in this case, this recorder is something that I've written, which just does a little bit of bytecode and it inserts it into my application. And writing bytecode by hand isn't something that any of us want to be doing. And so part of the Quarkus support is that you can have a little recorder which will do the thing that you want your bytecode to do and then play it back. So in this case, I've just got something saying hello world. So that's the sort of the simplest build step, just to confirm everything is working. This one's a little bit more interesting. This log handler build item is adding an extra log handler. And so it's this, which is causing all of my logging to go out, to get routed through to Minecraft, as well as appearing on the console. Please ignore my little errors. That is not actually an error. That's an IDE misconfiguration because the demo gods were not on my side today.
No worries.
So one of the other things that you often have to do when you're working with Quarkus is try and give it some hints for the optimizations that it does. So that's what's going on here, is we're declaring these things are unremovable, but adding them as additional beans so that they get hooked into the CDI framework. So that is sort of, I think of it as the kind of the scaffolding that you need to make other things work. This one is one of the more interesting ones. What this one is doing is it's called an annotation transformer build item. And so it allows me to find any annotation in my code and change it to another annotation or add another annotation. So that's what's allowing me to do things like hook every time I hit my application on the web and do the lightning bolt. So I'm saying this applies to, I'm going to look at any method, and then I'm going to say, if my method has a JAX-RS get annotation, then add in this class, which will ensure that as well as servicing the request, it sends output to Minecraft. And then the other thing that we saw is the exception mapper. So exception mappers are, they're sort of an existing part of, I think, the JAX-RS framework, but normally
Yes.
you would have to add them by hand. And so what I'm doing here is I'm being sneaky, and I'm saying, instead of having to go through and change my code, let's just use the exception mapper build item to add in some extra exception mappers so that I get the explosion when things go wrong. Does that kind of give a reasonable outline of what we've got going on?
Definitely, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think so.
So I can show a little bit more code now, or I can show slides. I don't know which sounds more fun.
Okay, so let's just recap here for people who might have like missed parts of a plot. So you took a like typical Quarkus application, like this to-do application that we have in various demos, and you created this awesome extension that by transforming, let's say, the code dynamically, you're actually sending events to your modded Minecraft server, right? And then those are showing up in the actual game.
Yeah, exactly
So,
that.
so with the power of a Quarkus extension, you're actually changing stuff in the Minecraft world in a extremely simple way.
Exactly, and the sort of the changing in the world is the mod, but then the connecting to that library is the extension, and it means that we could connect to any library anywhere in a fairly simple way.
Awesome.
So I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. If people have questions, then yeah, this is probably a great time to ask, or like just any time, obviously. If you want, here's a question: does the exception mapper and the extension override JAX-RS extension mappers in the to-do application, or is it an additional one? We need to see the code.
Yeah, I think it's neither. I think it is actually that exception mapper, but let me show you.
Oh, okay. It has a smaller priority. So yeah, if the application itself does have an exception mapper for exception.
Yeah. So so it implements the exception mapper, and then we've got this Minecraft service, which is the client.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that build item will just add extension mappers. It was not going to override the ones that.
Yeah, it's not basically because we're adding a priority of 100 to the user. So yeah, it's lower priority. And then we have another question that says, "Hi everybody." Oh, sorry, I should have put these on the screen. Hi everyone, new to Quarkus, loving a question. What are recorders and when should I use them? Well, I'll just say if you're new to Quarkus, you're not going to use them. But yeah, I'll let you folks expand.
That's a very good question. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got a recorder in there just because I wanted to try it out and get that hello world. But I think you're right that there's fairly few circumstances under which you'd need to use a recorder. It's when you need to do some bytecode manipulation. So here I'm printing out hello world via bytecode manipulation and injecting that into my application rather than just printing it out like a normal person. And so what's happening here is that method is it's being played, and so that's the recording, and then the bytecode is captured and injected into my application. So it's a way of writing bytecode that's slightly less painful than using one of the other bytecode libraries, but even still, there's probably almost no circumstances when you even need to write bytecode at all.
Yeah, so as a user, you're not going to need that, right? As an extension author, you'll probably need it.
Mhm. Yeah, let me expand that something a bit over there. When you pick up on the deployment module and the runtime module, so people can figure that out, right? So when Holly was showing that processor and all those build steps, so people have to realize that what you have on deployment module and the build steps, those are run when you build the Quarkus application. So those do not run when you actually start your JVM, right? So basically, the build steps are there, so we can do preemptive work that we don't have to do during runtime. And then the recorder and actually acts as a way to breach the build time and the runtime world, right? When you have to in the particular case where Holly was showing that she wants to do the low world, then she used a recorder to record what she has done during build to pass on the runtime. So well, I hope that makes all things a little bit more clear.
Cool, thanks. We have another question. Is there any wiki or dev guidelines on how to build a Quarkus extension?
We have the guide for Quarkus extension. I'm pretty sure that's
Yeah, let
probably
me try and find that.
not the best in the world, but it gives you some basic starting experience, I guess.
I've brought it up now on my screen, but if you Google Quarkus extension, there's a couple of guides. So there's like sort of a short guide, and then there's a deeper guide. And what I found really useful as well is there's a couple of blogs out there where people have sort of said, I wanted to write an extension. This was the use case I was trying to sort out, and here's my code. And so then I was able to sort of start at that level rather than with the guide.
Yeah, the guide is very, very dense. Well, it's like a reference, so it has everything. But most people, there is very little chance that you're going to need all this stuff.
And also, one of my other recommendations, if you really want to learn how to write an extension, my recommendation is to look into other Quarkus extensions that are already built and written. It's usually, I mean, the guide and the docs, of course, they will give you some basic introduction and give you some details. But in most cases, it's also easier to just go and look in some code and try to copy that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's always what I tell people as well. Like, take a domain that you know, like let's say I don't know, like Hibernate Validator or Jackson or whatever, and see what the actual Quarkus, the uh, corresponding Quarkus extension does for that library, right? And then you'll see there's depending on how far the integration goes, there could be a little or a lot of work being done. Someone's trolling us and saying the guide isn't dense enough.
Yeah, you can always make it more dense. That's fine.
Yeah. And we also have a question saying, where do I get an overview of already available build step items? So Holly did amazing work on this. I mean, when she actually joined the team, she came up with this extension without asking anybody, as far as I know. So yeah, maybe she can figure out where she found all these build items.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing, which I think is probably something that we want to look at improving is somewhere in the extension guide, there's a list of all of the build items.
Yes.
And so I just looked at that list. Unfortunately, because it's pulling from the Java doc, some of them have really good Java doc, and some of them, I mean, we've all done it, right? You're sort of halfway through. Some of them, like the sentence ends halfway through the sentence and that kind of thing. But what I sort of found as well is like the ones that had good Java doc were clearly designed for consumption, and the ones that had kind of shaky Java doc, probably they weren't really the person who wrote it wasn't intending that anybody else was going to use it. So I just went through that list and looked at what was available. And I think you sort of want to probably go in from like both directions, because I think it's sort of useful to get that overview of what's available, because sometimes something is possible that you wouldn't have even thought was possible, and it gives you an idea of, oh, hey, I didn't know I could have an interception, an exception mapper, but now that's going to be really useful. Let me do that. Or you probably want to go from the other way as well and say, like, I want to give support for this obscure database. So let me look at the extensions for the other databases and see what they had to do, because I'm probably going to have to do something similar.
Awesome. So no further questions at this point. So, yeah. Did you want to show slides or something?
Yeah. Before we do that, actually, let me. I just want to. No, that's the. Go back to the inception thing, because apparently you can't share audio if you share your whole screen, but you can share audio if you share just Firefox. Okay. So I thought I would try sharing just the Minecraft window and see if that works.
And just to follow up on a point we made earlier, Aaron, who is leading a docs revision, among a lot of other things, that is saying here that we're working on revising and enhancing our guide. So yeah, that's an extensive piece of work that's going on. We're trying to break up our guides into like more logical pieces, where like you have a guide, you have a reference, things like that. So that's ongoing, and hopefully we'll see the fruit of that work pretty soon.
And what is going on? Nope, I can't even find my window now. So never mind. Computers.
Yeah, they have a mind of their own.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just share these slides. If I can do that. Talk amongst yourselves.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, Georges can dance for us to entertain us then.
Sure, yeah, that'll be great. Hey, you're the one that plays drums. Why don't you crack out the drums and start playing?
IQ that.
Oh, you broke off.
So it's quite convenient. I can just jump from desk office to the drum kit when the computer is not collaborating. I just go over there and hit some drums, and that's it.
Excellent idea.
It's actually, I mean, it's quite convenient. It's way better than having it on the garage.
Yeah.
I have this hilarious situation, because only I am getting the audio, that a lot of the monsters in Minecraft make these sort of like grunting noises and that kind of thing. So I've got this sort of grunting in my ear, and I keep thinking it's one of you who's sort of regressed to Neanderthal mode and is grunting, and then I realize just Minecraft.
Well, thank you.
Apparently there's a zombie trying to kill me somewhere off screen. But shall I show?
Yes, please
run
go
through
ahead.
a few slides.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. So we already talked a little bit about extensions, but just to kind of recap, if you've been watching up to this point and none of it made sense, hopefully this will sort of a little bit of sense. So there's sort of in Quarkus, there's a fairly small core, and then there's a larger ecosystem of extensions. And and they cover, I think, pretty much most of the libraries that most of the people would want. And so for each of those libraries, in order to work in the optimum way with Quarkus, we have an extension within Quarkus. So if you want to use Elasticsearch, you use the Elasticsearch extension, and so on. And then together, all of those extensions make up the Quarkiverse. And the reason we have these extensions is back to really the sort of the architecture of Quarkus and what makes it so special. So normally for a Java application or a Java library, only a small amount of stuff is done at build time, and almost everything else is done at runtime. So, there's sort of loads and loads of YAML and loads and loads of XML, and that gets parsed at runtime. And then there's class path scanning, which gets done at runtime. And then there's all this sort of class loading, which gets done at runtime. And then once the extension's done all that, then there's this sort of extra work to figure out how all of those things fit together. And then there's things like thread pools. And the insight that the Quarkus team had is that if you could do a lot of that initialization at build time, it's a huge efficiency, because it means that there's sort of, you're doing that work once rather than every single time the application starts, which could be, in a modern architecture, that could be a lot of times. And it means that there's just a whole bunch of bootstrap classes that we get rid of. And then it means that you get the Quarkus performance that we all know, so it's sort of, it starts much faster and it needs much less memory. And what is somewhat surprising as well, I think, is that, then it also in general has better throughput, because there's all this reflection that you got rid of by front loading it to build time. So then you have that sort of model. So that hopefully is super familiar. And then I think by moving everything to build time, you kind of get this double win, because that's what enables the native compilation. But it means even if you're not doing native compilation, it just works better, until you have a normal framework on your class path, because then all of a sudden you get back a lot of the problems that Quarkus had fixed, and sometimes they're made even worse, or sometimes the whole thing just doesn't even function, because a lot of frameworks, they load so many more classes than they need. And a lot of frameworks have this really dynamic architecture that seemed like a good idea 10 years ago, but just isn't really suited for the way we write Java applications now. And underpinning all of that dynamism is all of this reflection, which just makes everything slow and memory hungry. And they do all of the initialization at runtime, because again, 10 years ago, that seemed like a good idea. So the reason we have the Quarkus extensions is that they fix all of that. And then there's this sort of double win, because another thing that they fix is the developer experience. And we talk about developer joy with Quarkus, and we can do that for any library that we're integrated with. Usually there's something that can be done that makes it more joyful to use, which is kind of awesome. I don't know if this is actually true. Probably you two have a much better idea of how true it is than me. But if I'm wrong, please don't tell me, because I like it. Because I like this idea, that when Quarkus started, in order to make it work with native, it had to do all of the bytecode manipulation and to do all of that front loading to build time. And then there's this sort of, hey, wait a minute, while we're doing that, we could actually make coding so much easier and do all of these developer experience improvements as well. And there's a few sort of forms for that. So there's the sort of the developer services, so that, I don't know if you noticed, but for my Minecraft, I had to actually have another window open where I had a Minecraft server running, and where I had a third window where I had a Minecraft client running. So one of the things that I want to do in future is put in a dev service for Minecraft. So obviously you wouldn't use the Minecraft developer service in production for your Minecraft observability in production, but when you're doing development, instead of having to manually start the Minecraft server, it just does it for you. One of the reasons I haven't done it for Minecraft is it takes about a minute for the Minecraft server to start up. So that's sort of not so good for the model of dev services, where it's, you kind of
not so joyful.
No, like when it takes a minute, you kind of want to start it at the beginning of the day and then not stop it till the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I'll see what can be done. And then there's the sort of the unified config, and then all these sort of opinionated shortcuts as well, which won't cover every scenario, but cover the really common ones.
I'll just note that, you mentioned that the Quarkus like started from the goal of like getting things working for native and like working its way backwards. That's not exactly the case. I mean, no, well, first of all, I should mention that neither myself nor Roberto were there at the beginning of Quarkus, right? But like we have a pretty good understanding of the history. What the idea was that Red Hat, or folks at Red Hat, had the idea that a lot of stuff needs to be moved to build time. They've had this idea for probably a decade now, right? That there were like attempts and prototypes done that attempted this thing. And let's just say it's not something like it's not something totally new, right? Like the Android community had already been experimenting with this for a few years. So what the big idea was that we figured out that in order to make Java more cloud native, a lot of this dynamicity, let's say, had to be moved to build time, right? Because the the artifact that you deploy is immutable anyway in a cloud native environment. So why pay the whole price of all this dynamicity at runtime when you can pay at build time? So after that had been put in place, then came the idea, well, when you already have this phase where you're doing all this awesome stuff at build time, then why not extend that phase and then bring in like native image compilation on one end and like a developer experience features on the other end, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You start with the cloud native requirement, and then you go out and it supports native, which is kind of awesome, and it supports the developer experience, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, I'll also add that a lot of the things that being done or required to be done on build time then gave us a lot of more information of the application that allows us to build a lot of features that I'm not saying that they'll be impossible to write without a build time environment, but they are considerably harder to write in that case, right? And so a couple of examples, right? Because you collect so much information when you're doing the build of the application, right? So a couple of examples is probably you've seen like applications failing because they're not able to inject beans during runtime, right? You've seen all the time that issue. That's impossible to happen with Quarkus because we have to generate the bytecode for Quarkus for those beans, and we validate injection points during build time, right? So I believe that when people or the team was building Quarkus, they never remember about that. But after we have that in place, then okay, then it was obvious that could be done in a very easy way, right? So now you start to like collect some of the benefits of having these kind of architectures, and you still discover things every day that you can now do with all of this information from the app that usually you only had during runtime, but now you have it on build time.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think, like I was saying at the beginning, we sort of forget how lucky we are working in the sort of the enterprise ecosystem, because with Minecraft, like minor changes had API changes, and dependencies weren't tightly versioned enough, and the a lot of the code is obfuscated, which means that your IDE can't even figure out how to, it can't give you sensible assistance. But one of the other things is that things work at build time and then they fail at runtime, which is, I mean, you can still get that with Quarkus, but having that closed world gives you so much more insurance that what's in that world is going to be safe and friendly and nice. And again, this isn't a terminology that we use officially in Quarkus, but to me, the sort of the mental model feels like, to the user or to the developer, it feels dynamic because you get all of this stuff coming for free. But in terms of its implementation, it's static because it's all done at build time. So you kind of get the great user experience of dynamic, but the great user experience of static and the great performance of static as well. And there's so many things, like always when I've been working on frameworks, there's been stuff that we've said it would be really nice to be able to do this, but then, oh no, it's too expensive to do this. If we do it at runtime, we'll just have to make the user do some work to configure it. And now we can say, no, we don't have to make the user do the work. So I think
sorry, I got disconnected for a few seconds there.
And in terms of, there was sort of a question earlier about why you would want to use the recorder, which I think is sort of a subset of the question of like, why would someone want to write a new extension in general? And one of those is, I mentioned that we've got most as libraries, but some libraries, the community hasn't written one yet. So then, maybe the gap. Certainly that's the case. Like if it's your library and there's not an extension for it, then that's certainly a good use case to write an extension. But one of the other things that we see people writing extensions for is the kind of the to support particular to your environment. So like it's not necessarily like that, you say I'm going to write an extension to support Pact because that extension doesn't exist, and I know zillions of people use Pact. It's I'm going to write an extension to support taking Minecraft and using it in this idiosyncratic way to connect to this library, and that's the only organization that does this is my organization, but I can make things way easier within my organization if I do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a few questions.
Cool.
So first one says, is it safe to say that Quarkus extension extend Java's type system in a way with all these build time validations?
What do you think?
I would say no, but
yeah, I agree. No.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I would think of it as as of introducing an additional step between like your Maven compilation and the execution of the resulting code at runtime, right? So you have a step that is aware of the entire application and can like produce a whole bunch of extra code on its own, and of course like do all this validation stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't say that it extends a type system in any way.
So I mentioned that extensions have two parts. There's the deployment part and the runtime part, and we want to make the deployment part as small as possible, the runtime part as small as possible, and those really map to the build phase, and then the startup phase of the application. And so, what happens with a lot of libraries is that the work of the extension is trying to move stuff that normally happens at runtime into deployment, into bytecode at deployment time. So that, we did that for the Quarkus core, and then it's the same thing for the extensions.
Cool. We also have another question. It's sort of unrelated to what we were talking about, but let's take it. It says, hello, same here, new to Quarkus, really loving it. Can I ask about the difference between Quarkus transaction and transactional Java Enterprise transactional because it makes a huge difference in my code. Okay. Do either of you want to take this one?
Not me.
I'm not really a database guy, but I have to look into the code to see what they do.
Yeah, I already did. So yeah, if you don't have
Well,
this,
I know what transactional does,
yeah,
not
yeah.
Quarkus transaction.
Well, Quarkus transaction actually, it's not. First of all, it's not an annotation. It's a bunch of static methods, if I remember correctly. But basically, it just makes transactional easier to use, right? If you're not going to use the annotation style, demarcation of transactions, you use this API, which is much easier to use. It's similar to the JavaX like user transaction thing, but it's a lot easier to use. So it's basically some one an implementation, let's say, of our philosophy in Quarkus to sometimes take like existing APIs and provide like let's say facades or whatever that make them just a lot easier to use, right?
Okay, so it is a programmatic API, not an annotation.
Yes, yes.
Okay, because the question has an app over there, so
Yeah, that's
got the impression it was an annotation.
yeah, it must have been a mistake.
Yeah, sure.
Um, do we have anything else here? There's a bunch of stuff here, but I'm not sure if it's okay. Here's one. When using an extension in an extension,
Oh.
okay, I'm not sure what that means, but we'll try to unpack it. Are the build steps of the used extensions executed automatically, or does code have to be called in a recorder? For example, JaxRS code is inside.
I
Uh,
think.
Yeah, trying to make the sense of the question, but maybe I can try to take a
yeah.
stab on
Go
that.
ahead.
So what happens is when you have multiple extensions on Quarkus, right? So Quarkus is smart enough to be able to build what we call this dependency tree between build steps, right? So let's just say that you're using a build step from another extension in your own extension. So Quarkus is smart enough to understand which build step has to be executed first to be able to provide the inputs and outputs to whatever extension you're building, right? So in that particular case, when we're doing something, then you can be sure that whatever other build step from other extension are going to execute and going to provide you what you need. And also Quarkus is also smart enough in the sense that if you have build items are not being in use or essentially not being used, those are not going to be executed at all. So I hope that answers the question. We're not completely sure, but that was what I understood from the question at least.
hmm So yeah, if we were gonna like describe it in let's say computer science terms, the whole like build steps thing forms like a graph, right? Where you have some inputs which are some like predefined build items, and you have some outputs which are again some predefined build items, and then there's paths from the input to the output which like involve other build items. But like Roberto said, if if there is no way that the final output uses any of the intermediate build items, then the computation, the build steps that produce them are not executed at all. And like Roberto said, all that is figured out automatically by Quarkus, right? So it's a pretty awesome.
And there's sort of a related case, which
Mhm.
is that there's some things that you would consume as build items, but then there's some things that are just that sort of helper plumber infrastructure that your extension is likely to use. So one of those is CDI. So you in your extension you probably want to get things injected, and so then how do you do that? And then another one, which I think the question mentioned, is JaxRS. So for example, in my Minecraft extension, I wanted to use JaxRS in order to talk to the Minecraft API because I didn't want to have to code it all by hand using the low-level constructs. And that I think that was the one place where I got really stuck actually. And you had to come in and show me what the code needed to look like to sort of figure out, okay, well, how do I get my JaxRS things injected? So I don't know if we have like a good documented example.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, if you want, let's just say you have like a JaxRS endpoint that you want to push or put on your own extension, right? You just write a regular JAX-RS class, and you just put it on the runtime module, and then it's going to get deployed as any other app. It just happens to be an extension, and then I mean it's more portable in the sense that you can just put it on whatever Quarkus application out there, and it will just consume all of that code, and we'll just put. I mean, for instance, we have an example. We have very good examples on that. Think about the Open API extension or the health extension, right?
Mhm.
Those are just REST endpoints that are being implemented on the extension directly, and then they'll just get exposed when you include those extensions in the Quarkus app.
Excellent, excellent. So we have another question that someone has already answered, but we can expand. To build reactive extensions, what library does Quarkus use to support like reactive programming? And somebody already answered, and the answer is Mutiny. Do either of you want to like expand on what Mutiny does, why we use it?
Yeah, I mean, Mutiny is our approach to build reactive applications, not only applications in general, but everything that we'll be doing in Quarkus with reactive stuff is being done with Mutiny. So we believe that I mean, there's other libraries out there that are doing reactive, right? We just feel that Mutiny that we build ourselves fits way more our use cases, and that's what we're being doing to push everything around reactive around Quarkus. Um,
Yeah, so you'll see like Mutiny integration with Hibernate Reactive or Rest Easy Reactive, um, all the reactive messaging, like
yeah,
the entire spectrum just works like, and now it works with GraphQL and gRPC and all that cool stuff. So it's everywhere. Okay, so we're almost at the top of the hour. So you folks have any concluding? What about Vertex? Is the follow up? Well, Vertex is the execution engine that underpins all the reactive stuff, right? So Mutiny is the layer that we expose to users, but everything's actually all the I/O and all the primitives are executed by Vertex, which you can use if you want, but most people won't have to do that. So anything you folks want to add before we close it off for today?
yes, I guess that one of the things that I wanted to add, if was not, I'm not sure if that was clear enough for the users, is you not require Quarkus extension to use any other Java library into Quarkus. Those will work out of the box. The reason why you want to write the Quarkus extension on top of another library is to give you all the goodies that we're being describing, right? Push some of the work that the library is doing in runtime for build time, doing all these validations sometimes. You do have to rewrite some code to be able to compile it to native, either by exposing some stuff to reflection or even going into some more deep stuff. But ideally, you won't have to write a Quarkus extension. You should be able to use all of the ones that are out there. But if you really need it, I hope that this session it's was clear enough for you to start that work.
Yeah, it makes me sort of sad that extensions are so niche since I'm looking at extensions. But on the other hand, in general, it's good. Extensions are niche.
Yeah, hopefully we'll make them less niche.
No, we want to make it more niche. That's the thing.
Awesome. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour. Thank you very much. Thanks Holly for your time, your impressive work on all this. Thanks everybody who showed up and or asked their questions. And I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure like next week we're off because like middle of August in Europe. That's
Yeah.
kind of dicey. So I think we'll be back in like a couple weeks. But yeah, we'll be in touch, of course, on Twitter and all the social media. So just keep an eye out for that, and you won't miss the next sessions. Okay, so thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.